All right, welcome back. Another edition of Build Your Legacy. Good to see you, brother. How you
Good
been?
to see you. Yeah, everything's good.
Yeah?
The weather's turning.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, if we can just get rid of the pollen, right?
Yeah, get some good rain.
Yeah, well, I need rain, but not too heavy of rain. I've just overseeded the yard a little bit, putting new grass in the backyard. Need that seed to stick around, not wash out. So
Some good grass for the summer, right?
well, yes.
The dogs or kids can tear it up for you.
Bingo, right? It's a placeholder for them to track into the house.
Yeah, way better than bringing mud into the house if you can help it.
That's the battle we're fighting right now. So got to make mama happy, or get some grass out there for them.
Yeah,
So,
sounds good.
yeah, man.
All right, what's on your mind?
It's a big topic for today. We've seen a lot of M&A activity, and I think it's a question we hear from prospective members, especially existing agencies, and even our current members, buying an agency.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of members aren't necessarily keyed in on that process, if that's the right term. So I figured today we could cover just some simple things to start the process, right? To start the conversations, not necessarily go deep in the weeds on it, but some things to kind of look at and some questions to ask as you begin the exploratory phase.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I think it's a good topic because I do think it doesn't matter if an agency hasn't even started in business yet or if they've been in business for 100 years. They want to talk about buying an agency.
They do.
Or they want to look at it at least and explore it. Whether they do it or not is a different story. But it is something we get asked, even from people who don't even have an agency yet.
I was going to say, I've been doing this now 9 years, this coming June, and a lot of our members that we help start up, when we start looking at business plans, that's part of their business plan eventually in some form.
Yeah. One of the things I think people need to look at when they're looking to buy an agency, or probably buy anything for that matter, is for them to really ask themselves some questions.
Yeah.
Can they handle this? They need to think about that. Can I handle this? Do I have the time to handle it?
Right.
Can I afford it?
Yeah.
I think they need to make sure it doesn't put themselves in a financial situation to make it where they're a little more stressed out. And then I think one of the biggest questions, does this fit where I want to go? Yeah. Because I think a lot of people just look at buying something to buy something, but if they don't understand that class of business that's in that agency or that location where it may be, does this help that agency go to the next level?
I think those are great points, right? And I mean, your comment there at the very end, don't just buy to buy. I think that's one of the things we see a lot of times is agents want to acquire an agency because they just see a premium volume or a revenue number, and they don't necessarily dive much deeper than that into the actual inner workings of the business to understand if it is, I'd say, palatable for them.
Right. Does it fit where they want to go?
Yeah.
Again, if they are a personal lines only agency and they really have no desire to go to commercial lines, but this is a commercial lines based agency, that's really not taking where they want to go. Now, if they're a personal lines based agency and their desire is to grow and get better in commercial lines, hey, go get it.
I think one thing when we look at this and you're making that acquisition, a lot of times you see that agent pinpoint a carrier within the agency they want to buy.
Yeah.
And they automatically assume if I buy this, that relationship will transfer into my business. So they're looking at it at a borderline market access play. But to your point, if you don't have an understanding of what's going on, if you don't have a niche in that business, if you can't operate, if it doesn't fit your agency, that could even jeopardize that code with that company because they might take a step back. And while it's a good, valuable book today, if they don't think you're going to continue that trend, they might decide to go in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that does fit a little bit too in different, but on that same topic with the carrier side of things is right. I do think this is where we fit in well to help agencies looking to acquire things because they may not have that company A or company Z. And all of a sudden now we're able to maybe to bridge that gap. Maybe we do have that partner carrier and they just don't have it yet.
Right.
And maybe that we can help bridge it with them to keep that carrier.
Well, I was going to say, it's no matter if you're buying an agency or working to get an appointment with a carrier, you're telling a story to that carrier. And I like to believe that where we really excel is helping prepare our members to tell that story appropriately to sort of meet that carrier's expectation when you go in to buy an agency, because I see this happen so many times. You want to ask some simple questions to your, I mean, you don't want to just look at a premium number and say, okay, this is a good fit, right? You want to ask some simple questions to get an idea that will kind of help flush out, does it fit your agency? But I think one that's relevant to us is, hey, any agency you're looking to buy, are you a member of an aggregator, a cluster, a partnership of any kind?
Yeah.
Because that then comes with some potential ramifications should you decide not to continue that partnership with some we've seen in the marketplace, right? And so when you're looking at the carriers that are there, if they're not going to be there after acquisition, you need to know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Of course, revenue, you want to explore the revenue, and you really want to do that at least over a 3-year period of time to see if that's agencies growing, if it's flat, if it's shrinking, just get an idea of what's going on. That can tell you a little bit about the overall profitability of the agency.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, and personal lines, commercial lines split, or if they have employee benefits, or if they have any life insurance in there, you would need to know about that as well.
How much each one of those revenue factors are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I would say from a carrier perspective, have a list of who they're working with that are direct appointments.
Yep.
And really, if you can get your hands on those production requirements, that tells a great story about the business within itself. Again, simple things that you want to look at. But those are all sort of quick and easy questions. And then if you want to get a little more granular, which I know that's not really what we're trying to do, but, staffing's a big piece, what their, I would call it monthly, overhead is. And then within the staffing, what type of employment agreements do you have?
Yeah,
do you
I think staffing's important.
It's extremely important because if you buy something that could potentially walk out the back door and go to another agency with a producer or a CSR, that could be a detrimental thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's one that, we've talked about W-2 employees and 1099 employees in the past.
Yep.
I think those are things that you need to understand of, are these actual employees? Or are they independent contractors? Certainly, what's the compensation? How are they compensated? Yep. What's the benefits? I mean, you got to get into all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it goes into the non-compete. If they're a 1099 independent contractor, that non-compete is not going to serve you any good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just buying a leads list more or less, right, at that point. So, I think those are all easy questions. And then from there, I would say if you're depending on the agency, and we probably see this more in the commercial world, you want to look at those larger accounts.
Yeah.
Get details around them. What, how much of the revenue are they actually making up? Because again, if that's not something you've got a specialty in, can you really expect to continue those relationships, all of those things?
Yeah, or if one account just skews the numbers. So if it's a big portion of it, it needs to be taken into consideration. I also think accounts that are related or have some affiliation with the employees or the owner or
family,
things of that nature, they need to be discussed. And they may be insignificant. It may just be a personal lines account, no big deal, but it also may be the biggest trucking contractor that person has, and it makes up 30% of the revenue. So now all of a sudden you got a big account and it's a related account.
Right.
And so there's some factors there that you should be aware of if you're asking the question.
And I think those are, if you're working with somebody who I would say is a serious seller, they're probably going to have a lot of these answers for you wrapped up in a nice little bow.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I would say if you struggle getting these answers from a potential, seller, that should be indicative of kind of going back to, is this a good fit? Can I bring this in? Will it work out? Right. Am I ready for this?
Or you just help guide them. It may be one of those that, they may need to sell. They may not know what it is. And so hopefully this podcast helps some people kind of guide some of the others. One of the things that I'll also say needs to be looked at as well would just be lease agreements or any long-term, or let me say not long-term, but lease agreements and vendor contracts. Are there any vendor contracts or leases that are tying you into things that you may not want, or you may want them, but they're worth asking? So, I mean, it could be phone systems, it could be IT systems.
No, that's a great point.
Again, it could be lease, and you just need to understand if it's X dollars a month and it's for another 3 years, you just need to understand that.
Yeah.
Copiers are pretty big deals with people leasing those.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I would say to the property side, as well, going back to, hey, are you a brick and mortar shop? And if there's a lease there, are you able to step into that and assume that and become a brick and mortar shop? And the changes that come along with that, it's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, and I think this is kind of given some quick overview,
right? I was
of what people should look to and maybe look to ask to get the ball rolling a little bit. Certainly, there's contracts that need to be signed and non-disclosures and all that stuff to dive in a little bit deeper into everything. But, some of this stuff, you can get just through conversation, but we certainly recommend a contract or some kind of due diligence process to start doing this under confidentiality.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the goal here today was we equate a lot of what we do and a lot of what we see in the marketplace to dating, right? This is that first cup of coffee, right? These are those sort of initial conversations that kick off and see, hey, do we really want to take it to the next step?
Absolutely. Well, look, I hope this gives you some questions, some ideas, or just makes you think a little bit about, does this fit you?
Yeah, helps you start putting together a plan, for the future.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man.
See you next week.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks for tuning in. You can catch our Build Your Legacy Insurance Edition podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, or send us over a topic recommendation at podcast@siaofnc.com. If you're interested in learning more about what we do, visit us online at www.siaofnc.com. We hope you enjoyed our newest episode. See you next week.